You are listening to Real Estate Today. To reach Deb tomorrow or with questions and comments about the show, please send an email to Deb at realrealestatetoday.com. That's Deb at realrealestatetoday.com. Now, back to this week's program.
All right, welcome back to Real Estate Today. And we are going to jump right into things with part 4 of our home buyer series. And there's actually 12 segments total. So try and figure that math out.
Okay.
So we are going to talk today about step 4 of the home buying process, which is when you have an accepted offer, what happens, and then what happens at closing. So you found your dream home. Now what do? And the first thing, obviously, is that you want to negotiate an offer. And this can get a little complicated if you let it. So just kind of take deep breaths and go with your gut. The first thing you need to think about is how quickly do you need to move? And Karen, I know you've seen this a lot in our market in the past year, that you have to move really fast.
Yes, we do.
So no dilly-dallying typically. But your realtor's going to have an answer for you on that. If it's a new listing, you're probably going to have to move same day in terms of making an offer. One of the interesting things for me, I've been in real estate for quite some time now, 12 years, I think. And we're doing a lot of things electronically now that we didn't back in the beginning. So it used to be like, okay, well, let's schedule an appointment and then we'll write the offer up. Right. And now it's like, I'm going to send you something, sign it.
Yeah.
Part of that's the market and part of that's the technology. And I hate doing that because I used to be so set on like, no, you have to come in and meet me face to face and I want to look at your eyes and make sure you understand. But we haven't in the past 2 years really had time to do that because you have to move so quickly.
Right. So
I'm like, I'm going to send this to you. I want you to sign it. Trust me. And then as soon as we have an acceptance, we'll come in and we'll go face to face and go over everything. The biggest question that people ask, usually the first and only question that people ask, and I bet as a lender you even get asked this too, how much should I offer?
They do, or they'll say, the house is listed for this, but I'm not going to come in anywhere near that.
Right.
I'm like, ooh, you need to go discuss that with Deb.
Well, what I always tell people is that there is usually a lot more to consider when making an offer beyond just price. And so you have to look at the whole package. So yes, you're going to, put an offer price, purchase price out there, but you're also going to be offering a closing date. And some people think, well, I'm going to close in 90 days because I'm in a lease. Well, guess what? That's probably not going to fly, but it's a negotiable item. And so you work through it. How long you have for inspections, what appliances are going to stay with the property, when do you get possession, are the sellers paying any closing costs, how much earnest money are you putting down, are you going to ask for home warranty? Those are all negotiable things. Okay. And so again, what's really important is looking at the big package. In our world, when homes are selling for about, on average, 99% of list price, which means there's a lot of homes that are selling for more than 100%.
Exactly.
We're not San Francisco where they're selling for like 120% over list price, but still, if you are asking for closing cost assistance and a home warranty and a super long closing and other things, the washer and dryer, when the sellers weren't intending on including them, then you're going to need to pony up and pay for that. Or you're going to have to kind of find some balance elsewhere. So it's really about balance when you're looking at that. One thing I do want to mention, too, with that closing cost assistance, because this, I don't know if you ever have people, I seem to struggle explaining this to people about how it impacts the seller's bottom line.
I do have some trouble sometimes, and if they're in front of me, it's easier. But if they're not, I try to use some simple numbers.
Yeah. I always use the $100,000 example. So if I say, okay, seller says I want $100,000 for this house, and you say, fine, I'll give you $100,000, but I also want $3,000 in closing cost assistance. That's not free to the seller. I think a lot of people think that they just don't think that plays into the math.
Yeah.
But if the seller wants $100,000 for a house and you want $3,000 in closing cost assistance, that's going to feel like an offer of $97,000 to them.
Exactly.
It's not an apples to apples. He gets $200,000 offers and one has $3,000 in closing cost assistance. Those are a world apart in that world. Mm-hmm. So you might need to offer $103,000 so that the seller's bottom line is still $100,000. So I struggle to explain that sometimes. And I think I need to do a little 30-second YouTube video with a whiteboard and just send that out to people and be like, here you go, because I get that question all the time. But that's important to think about, and it's important in a world where homes are going for very close to list price, that's not just free money.
And as a side to add on to this, is that this is why to me it's very important that you are working with a realtor who is familiar with that market, because if you are in that negotiation where you are going to go over list, we just want to make sure that it is in an area that it's the likelihood that the appraisal will come out, it'll
support that value.
Yeah, support that value, because sometimes that may not happen.
Right, for sure. And then, so here's some other questions to ask when you are thinking about your offer picture. That's what we're going to call it. I'm going to coin a new phrase. Your offer picture. It's not your offer price. It's your whole offer picture. What are all these things that you're offering? And so one of the things that you want to ask your realtor is, what's the average sales price to list price ratio for your area, which is a number I just mentioned. So in our area, it's about 99%. Used to be about 96%. And so that's gone up in the past year or two with the increase in the shortage of homes, stronger seller market. And that just means that homes on average are selling for about 99% of what they're listed for. And remember, that's an average. So there's going to be some that come above and some that come below. So that's going to tell you kind of how much wiggle room you probably have. The other question to ask is, what's the market doing? If it's really slow, is there a lot of competition out there? I mean, that's going to play into how aggressive you can be. I think a lot of people just, I don't know, they go in with this like, I'm going to lowball mentality, or the seller. I had a call last week from a realtor. Funny enough, it was the same realtor that we were talking about in segment 1 who stood up the people that she was supposed to show the house to. But anyways, she had called about a listing and said, well, it's going to be a cash offer, so how low can we offer? Well, first of all, I can't really answer that because that's not in my seller's best interests at all. I wouldn't give a huge discount for cash, because loans, or if you've been pre-qualified, loans are almost as good as cash these days. But they went into the house and they saw that the sellers had moved out, and so they assume that the sellers are super desperate. And a lot of people do that, and they think, well, they'll take $50,000 less than what it's listed for. Well, you also have to look at it from the seller's perspective. So my sellers, maybe, I don't know what their mortgage payment is, but it might be like $1,200 or $1,500 a month. So take that $50,000 hit. Don't you think they're probably going to rather just pay the $1,200 or $1,500 a month for the next, 6 months?
Long,
yeah, and wait for the right buyer. But people don't look at it from that perspective. So if just don't get disappointed if somebody's kind of pushing back and going, yeah, it doesn't really make sense,
I mean, usually cash is king, but sometimes not always in our market anyway. I mean, it doesn't make things go any faster.
Yeah.
I mean,
if I have 2 offers and they're exactly the same except one's cash and one's finance, I'm probably going to go with the cash. Although that bit me in the butt last year because they gave me proof of funds and they weren't legit.
Yeah.
Look, it was the same agent.
Then that would be a problem. Well, that's a pattern. That
There's a pattern here. Oh, my goodness gracious. Yeah. So anyways, how long has the home been on the market is certainly something to consider as well. Has the price been reduced? Now, this one I think is kind of interesting. I try to explain this to people. When the seller has reduced the price, say $10,000, there is a period of time in which they grieve the loss of $10,000. Sounds crazy, but it's true, right? They were hoping forever how long that they were going to sell it for X, and now they've had to give up $10,000 out of their pocket is how it feels to them.
Right.
So if you come in the day after they drop their price $10,000 and you want them to drop another 10, you're going to get a lot of pushback.
Sure.
But if that $10,000 price drop was 30 days ago and the home is still sitting there, you're going to have more negotiating room. And a lot of times it's just, if it's not the right price for you, it's not the right price for you. And then it's not the right house for you, and that's okay. You can't make it fit. And I think sometimes people are like, but the seller should want to. I'm like, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't force them.
No, and we feel like that, I think, sometimes when it's something that we desperately want that badly.
Right.
Yeah. But it's never worked out where you can force it to happen.
And sometimes it just doesn't make sense, but it is what it is. One thing we hear a lot about are comps. comparables. And that's something that can be helpful to make sure that you're not overpaying for the house and tell you what the home is worth. In Bloomington, I find that it's kind of tricky because there's a lot of just really unique properties. We have a few what I call cookie cutter neighborhoods where there's enough similar homes that you can kind of do comps and say, this home should sell for this. But for the most part, we have like real funky neighborhoods and country properties and things like that. So it's tricky to do comps and say this is exactly like Zillow thinks that they can do. This is exactly what your house is worth. Don't listen to Zillow. I guess I should have put that in there too. And the most important tip is just to understand your local market and make your offer based on that. I get a lot of people, and they say, well, my mom said I should offer this. Or my cousin who lives in Las Vegas says I should offer this. And their basis of knowledge is just completely different than what is true and accurate in this market. Mm-hmm. So that's something to be aware of. You smile and you nod and you say, thank you so much for your advice. And then you listen to your realtor. I did want to mention that in this step is the first time that money actually comes into play, where you got to start kicking some money out of your pocket. So we've come all the way through. And now you put some earnest money down. Earnest money, people call it different things. It's like a deposit. I always say that it shows that you have some skin in the game, that you're not going to just disappear off the face of the earth and cause the seller to sort of have to regroup and put their house back on the market, and maybe they lost another good buyer in the time that the house had been in that pending or contingent status. It varies by market as to how much. Usually it's around 1%, but again, that's a negotiable item. And then that's held in an escrow account by the listing broker. In our market, it's different in different markets who holds that. But it's held in escrow, which is that word no one knows what it means. But escrow means in suspension. So that money is actually just sort of held in suspension. That check is deposited. Make sure it's good when you write it. And then it's brought to closing, and it counts towards your down payment or your closing costs. But whoever's holding that money in escrow, they're not playing the ponies with it. They're not earning interest on it. They're not doing anything like that. It's just being held in suspension. So that is the first time that you're going to have money out of pocket. I want to make sure we touch on that as we go through. All right, we are going to go to a break, and now we're going to talk about once the offer has been accepted, what happens next. So stick around. You're listening to Real Estate Today, your home for smart real estate.